I'm a 31-year-old woman. This happened a few years back. I was walking from a friend's house to meet my son's father at a bar where we frequented in those days. It was winter, icy and snowing with giant piles of snow all around. I was walking from a friend's house around 9 p.m. down an alley that served as a driveway area for many houses. Not a great neighborhood, but not particularly bad either. I was wearing my apocalypse boots, waterproof, knee-high, winterproof. I usually have headphones in blaring music while I walk. That night, for some reason, I decided not to. In hindsight, that is what saved me. I'm about the equivalent of 2 to 3 blocks away from the bar. There's a younger guy, early 20s, walking about 50 feet behind me. "Hey you." I turn around, it seems he's talking to someone else. "Hey." I look back, then continue walking. "Yeah, you. No, don't turn around, sweetheart." I start to walk faster as I realize he's getting closer. Ahead of me, I see an SUV running, backed out of the parking spot, but blocking my path. I turn around, there's another guy. The door to the SUV opens and there's a couple of guys in it looking at me. One gets out and stands by the open door. I turn to look at the guy behind me. Out of fucking nowhere, about 5 more guys come out, surrounding me from a distance, slowly closing in. The realization that they were hiding behind piles of plowed snow hits me. I realize they were just standing and watching me. A couple of them had their phones out and were recording something that was about to go down. Nobody was smiling, but they were closing in on me, trying to get me to walk to the SUV. Fight or flight kicked in, and I decided I didn't want to know what was about to happen. I wanted to catch them off guard, so instead of running forward, I bolted to the left. Thank God for those boots, I could run across the ice, no problem. I ended up cutting through a few yards and made it to the bar. I used to work as a housekeeper for this company that would assign me to different houses in the area that we're hiring. I had this one job at a house that was just a few towns over one night. I was reluctant to go since it was late, but I knew an old back road that would cut the driving time in half. It used to be an old logging road, and there's tons of them here in Oregon that can be handy shortcuts to places. One downside was the road was small, windy, and if you got into a crash, you'd basically be in the middle of nowhere surrounded by forest. I'm not sure it was completely legal to drive on either. So anyways, I was driving down this road, groggy and tired, when I felt a small collision on my trunk. I cursed and pulled over to inspect the damage and talk to the driver, who had seemingly come out of nowhere. He pulled up behind me. I got out and walked over to him and asked if he was okay. I was about 3 feet from the car and I could see him sitting in there, but he wasn't getting out. It was winter and night, so everything was pitch black and I could barely see anything. But I knew there was a guy in there. It was freezing cold and I was getting creeped out, so I told him since there was barely any damage, I was just gonna go. As I was heading back to my car, I heard his door open behind me. I turned around and saw him standing there. He was tall and had on a large black coat and baggy jeans. I stepped towards him and noticed something that made my heart sink. His hands were white-skinned, but his face looked dark. I squinted and realized he was wearing black makeup on his face. This scared me even more because I was thinking he was wearing blackface, and for the record, I'm black, and he had followed me out here in the middle of nowhere to harm me. I turned and started for my car when I felt the cold tip of a gun press on the back of my head. I was ready to cry at this point, thinking I was going to die alone out here because of my skin color. I ended up trying to reason with him, but I could barely choke out my words as I told him he didn't have to do this. Something surprising happened. The guy started to cry as well, and then just jumped in his car and sped off. Maybe I should have tried to see the license plate, but at that moment I just got in my car, drove home, and called my parents. I never ever in my entire life thought I'd narrowly escape being the victim of what was possibly a hate crime. I'm glad this guy had a change of heart, or whatever you call his reasoning for sparing me. This incident happened to me over the Christmas holidays this past year, and it just occurred to me that the sheer insanity of it may make a good fit for this sub. For reference, I'm a 24-year-old female. My cousin and I decided to go up a few hours north for a nice winter cabin weekend. It went great, nothing creepy at all. On our final day, we packed up at 6 a.m. and hopped in the car to get an early start on the 5-hour drive we had ahead of us. It was a foggy morning, not actively snowing, but previous snowfalls had piled up quite a bit, making the drive a little risky in the dark early hours of the morning. My cousin was driving, and we're chatting and listening to podcasts, not too aware of our surroundings. We were about 20 minutes into the drive when, unfortunately, the car skidded off the road a little, and we very slightly grazed a tree. We got out to take a look, and by some miracle, there was no damage or anything on the car. As my cousin and I started to laugh with relief, we were just thanking our luck. I shielded my eyes because of some idiot with their crazy high beams coming up behind us. So obnoxious, my cousin laughed, starting to open her door to step back in, when the blinding headlights car honks and continues to keep at it as they approach us. My cousin and I looked at each other, super confused, but quickly hopped back into the car. The car begins to slow down and we're able to see a man in the driver's seat, and he finally takes his hand off his horn and pulls up right next to my cousin's car, which is really dumb because we were off-road and it was crazy slippery. He rolls down his window and motions for my cousin to roll down ours. We figure it's fine because he's still inside in his car, and we're in ours now. "Hey there, ladies, in a rush this morning," he laughs. Not really, just trying to get home. Can we help you with something?" My cousin replies, totally stone-cold poker face. "Oh no, I just noticed you dropped something about 2 kilometers back. It fell out of your trunk." My cousin turned to look at me. "Did you shut the trunk when we left?" "Yeah, dude, obviously," I replied, knowing the way the car is shaped. You would have seen and definitely heard an open trunk. "No thanks, sir. I think you might have us mixed up with someone else," my cousin said and immediately rolled up her window. This man just gave off bad vibes. He starts blaring his horn again and motioning for us to roll down the window. My cousin rolls it down again and sees him holding up some woman's underwear and smiling. "See, this look familiar?" I can literally remember the exact tone with which he said that. "No thanks, sir. You have a great day now." My cousin quickly rolled up her window again and floored it, quickly hopping back on the road, and thankfully the man was either taken aback or just gave up and we didn't see him for the next hour or so. My cousin and I were both a little shaken up, but tried to laugh it off since we were safe and hadn't seen his car follow us or anything. About 2 hours into our trip, we get off at an exit to fill up on gas and grab some breakfast at Starbucks. My cousin and I mobile ordered, and I was going to quickly run in to grab our food and drinks. It had started snowing at this point, and while the sun had been up for a little bit, it was still foggy and gloomy, making it hard to see the surroundings. I ran in, and as I reached for our food, someone's arm reached over mine to grab a napkin, and I instantly flinched back. When I looked up, I truly almost shat myself. It was the fucking man. Despite him never getting out of the car, he did have his lights on, and I was able to get a clear view of his face. It was him, I was sure. "Look at us, just like old friends," he smiled at me. I immediately looked down, grabbing my food, and started walking out of the store. As I left, I heard him talking to the barista, saying, "See that beauty queen? That's my beauty queen." What the fuck? I almost had tears in my eyes because I was so terrified. I power walked back to the car, almost tripping outside because I was so scared and not walking like a normal person. I hopped in and screamed, "We need to get the fuck back on the road. He's inside the fucking Starbucks." My cousin started laughing, thinking I was pranking her, but she quickly realized that was not the case when the man walked out of the Starbucks a few seconds later, with no drink or food in hand, walking straight towards our car, waving at us. My cousin quickly started to turn the car on when the man reached into his pocket. I genuinely thought he would pull out a weapon, and held up the underwear he had held up before. Thankfully, my cousin took no time in backing out of there and speeding back onto the highway. We were both freaking out at this point, not sure how he ended up at the same stop as us, despite us not seeing him behind us at all. He could have taken some sort of back roads we didn't know about, but it would have taken him much longer than us to get there, unless he was trailing behind. I don't know. We quickly tried to find an alternate route on our Maps app, and thankfully there was one that made us go through some local roads which we hoped might help. Of course, with our luck, as we were going through a smaller town, I felt the car getting gradually lower on my side. Of course, with our luck, as we were going through a smaller town, I felt the car getting gradually lower on my side. We pulled over at a well-lit gas station and realized we were losing air in one of the tires. We were both too scared to get out, but figured if we went out together it might be less scary. So we did. We filled up the tire with some air and it seemed to be okay. We got back in the car, back on our way. Everything seemed fine until 10 minutes later when this car seemed to appear out of nowhere directly behind us. My cousin and I looked at each other, having no idea what to do if it were the man. Our suspicions were confirmed when he blared his stupid horn yet again, and quickly swerved off the road to get right next to us, so this time he was on my side. He had his window rolled down and was screaming at us. At this point I gave zero fucks and called my brother-in-law, who's a cop. I know I should have called the police directly. It was a stupid move, but in the moment I was trying to justify this as not being that serious. My brother-in-law told us to drive directly to the nearest police station and to call them right away so they would be alert. Literally as he was instructing me, the creep braked his car, just stopped on the side of the snowy, icy road. We were still speeding away, so it quickly got harder and harder to see him. But from what I could make out, he had gotten out of his car and was sitting on the hood. Just sitting on the hood of his car in freezing snowy weather. My cousin and I did not want to stop or do anything. With about an hour left in our journey, we decided to just book it straight home, and thankfully that was the end of that. I know we made a lot of stupid mistakes that could have potentially had horrible consequences, but I'm super happy we made it out alive and unharmed. I still don't know how he caught up to us seemingly magically, and why he just sat there at the end, but I don't even want to find out at this point.